Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had fun listening to all the TED Talks from before. And I know you're probably a little tired from learning all this information, but please bear with me for a little while. So, I'm Rosalyn, I'm 17, and I am too young to understand why gay rights is wrong. When I was 8, I learned that gay couples could not get married. And the details are a bit blurry because it's been around 10 years, but I do remember sitting in the living room watching TV, and this pro-gay rights marriage commercial came on, and I just started crying really hard. And you know how those commercials are, you know, the ones with the dogs dying, and they just make you cry. And it was at that moment that my mom called from work to tell me that she'd be home soon. She heard how upset I sounded and asked me what was wrong, and I just told her, I just think gay people should be able to marry too. Yeah, you bet that wasn't what she was expecting her 8-year-old kid to say out of nowhere. And for a while, there was just silence, static, until finally she said, "You're too young to understand." And that was that. And now, even 10 years later, into the future, when I'm almost 18 and legally an adult, whenever I try to bring the issue up again, she still says the same words from 10 years back. And of course, this was how I reacted. Now, you may be thinking, I gotta cut my parents some slack. After all, they're Chinese, they're much older than I am, so they grew up with traditional beliefs. And China, with its millennia's history worth of filial piety, is very fixated on a big traditional family, like this one. And being gay, no matter where in the world, is often synonymous to no family, which is not true, by the way, because adoption exists. And also, today we have so much advanced technology where you can start up a family in different ways. But adoption and technology or not, it's still not very accepted in China. But homosexuality wasn't always so looked down upon in China. In fact, it was very common. I took the liberty to do some censorship. So, homosexuality was actually almost as common as heterosexuality in the late 3rd century, according to the official Song records, like from the Song dynasty. All the gentlemen and officials esteemed homosexuality, to the extent that husbands and wives were estranged. Now isn't that queer? It made me wonder what happened between all these years for something to be so ordinary and esteemed to turn into something to be shunned for. Aren't we meant to become more civilized? To become more progressive? Well, there is an answer to that question, one that I myself didn't expect. But before I get to that, I'd like to first paint a picture of what it's like to be gay today. Nowadays, we have celebrities who are openly queer. We have YouTubers, TV shows, movies, online dating apps, and there's a ton of queer people online. Take this, for example. On the right over here is a tweet from an ordinary girl on Twitter. And she became viral not because of the fact that she likes girls, but because her crush woke up at 6 a.m. in the morning to bake her that delicious-looking bread. And on the left over here is a couple who proposed to each other as a surprise, and they ended up doing a double proposal. And nobody gave them a hard time about it. It was actually the people in the back were very excited for them, almost as excited as they were themselves. So as you can see, LGBTQ is much more normalized today than it was a few decades back. Depending on where you live, you can even see some interactions out on the streets. And it is this type of casual alliance, casual acceptance, that's so important to me and other queer people. But unfortunately, not everyone is so lucky to experience that. In July last year in Seattle, a couple was walking down the street holding hands. A man then came out and stabbed them with a broken bottle because it made him uncomfortable. And this is only because they were two men. Gay people are not protected by hate crime law and other types of discrimination, even if gay marriage is legalized in that country. And much of the LGBT legislation is like that. Because you've got centuries of homophobia and intolerance, and you just throw the laws on top, like a cloth, and expect it to be better. But it's not. The box is still empty. It just looks like it isn't. So as important as laws can be, they can't make that big of a difference on society if society itself does not want to change. But that's not to say that laws are completely useless. In fact, quite the opposite. In countries where laws are against queer people, it's exponentially worse. Today, homosexuality is still punishable by death in 12 countries. That is highlighted in purple over here. And in 72 countries in orange, homosexual acts are illegal. So in Iraq, one of the purple countries, public execution of gays is applauded. It's a celebratory event. And even in countries that aren't highlighted in any of the colors, like purple and orange, like Russia, discrimination is still rampant. In Russia, the government is anti-gay. Gays are compared to pedophiles. And you have these everyday people who think it's their responsibility to personally track gay people down and humiliate them, harass them. So I want you all to think of something. You and I, we all did not get to choose where we were born. And for the most part, we don't really get to choose what we like, what we dislike, who we like, and who we dislike. So life is kind of like a randomizer. And you have this machine that spits out your identity and your circumstances. So let's say you were a boy, and separately, you like other boys. But you were also born in one of the 72 countries. You didn't get to choose any of that. And you better learn how to hide it, or else it's game over. And this could happen to any of us. I was lucky to be born in America and to be in Hong Kong, which is more tolerant. Today, out of 4 queer people in the workforce are discriminated. And according to Stonewall, one of the LGBTQ charities in the UK, found in a survey that about 1 out of 5 queer people have been subjected to hate crime in the past year. And it's doubled for transgender people. Now, this is about to get a little personal, but could you all think back to the time when you were discriminated once? Whether it be for your gender, or your skin color, your religion, or your race, or anything else. It wasn't pleasant, right? So I want you to know that these aren't just numbers on a page. These are real-life experiences that people go through every day. And all of these experiences stack up. Many queer people today avoid restaurants. They avoid public transportation. They don't go to hospitals for their checkups, and they don't even go to the grocery store sometimes because they don't want to be discriminated. But this is at the cost of what they need. So, why am I talking so much about the horrible things in the West when I'm supposed to be talking about China? What about China? Well, the truth is, homophobia was spread through Western ideas and the major religions, which is Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam. And I'm not criticizing any of these religions or Western ideas. I'm just telling history. But that's not to say that China has been completely accepting of the queer community, because it has long been derisive of trans people, because they're very keen on their traditional gender roles. Confucius, the one on the right here, is one of the most prominent philosophers of China. And he believed that people should follow their traditional gender roles. And for women, it's to be good or obedient wives, daughters, mothers, sisters, basically just be good for their male counterparts. And Mencius, one of his followers, believed that the most horrible and filial thing you can do is to not have kids. So, as you can see, much of the LGBTQ community lifestyle goes against that. because they can't really have a traditional family dynamic. But to be fair, much of the modern day lifestyle goes against that too. So, maybe these ideas, which are more than 2,000 years old, are a little bit outdated. So, homosexuality only received serious backlash during the 7th century in the Tang Dynasty, which is when China first came into contact with South China and the West through the Silk Road trade. So Hinduism came from South Asia, and Islam came from the Middle East, and Christianity came from the West. And that later there was a renewed wave of homophobia in the 19th to the 20th century, which was when colonization and westernization happened. So this is a map of China in the mid-19th century, and the green spots is what I want you to focus on. That's the British spheres of influence. That's essentially how homophobia was reintroduced to China in recent decades. And that's why, even though in ancient China, homosexuality was very ordinary and esteemed, but in recent decades, it's become more intolerant. So in 1997, things have gotten better, and homosexuality was decriminalized in China in 1997. And while I was researching the past, I found something quite interesting. So in 2001, homosexuality was removed from the official list of mental illnesses in China, and June is Pride Month. June 2016 was when gay marriage was legalized in the US. Now you may be wondering, what do all these things have in common with each other except being great advancements for the queer community? Well, I am Chinese American, and I was born in 2001, June 28th. And it's kind of funny. I was trying to scan my passport for a clear scan, and I could not get rid of the rainbow hologram over my face. I tried really hard. I tried like 10 times. But even my passport was trying to tell me something. So I think it's safe to say that I didn't choose the gay life. The gay life chose me. And I'm very happy to accept that. But anyway, you know that overused phrase, spread positivity? Well, turns out the opposite is just as true and just as potent. We can still feel the awful effects of hate even 2,000 years into the future, or right now. But times are changing, things are getting better, and we've made great progress. So out of the 195 countries in the world, around 30 have legalized same-sex marriage. And homosexual people are no longer banned from the workforce for being a security danger. And some of you guys may have been to Pride marches before, or at least heard of it. They used to be very rare events in the past, but nowadays we have them annually all across the world. Now, that's pretty amazing. We've come a long way. But now, more than ever, we need your continued support. Now is not the time to become complacent, to think, oh, this is good enough. We gave them what they wanted, so let's just go back to what it once was. Because we're not just a battle for same-sex marriage equality. We're not just a battle for protection against discrimination. We're a battle for equity and humanity. And we, all of us, no matter our gender, our sexuality, our race, religion, or anything else, we cannot fully enjoy our rights if another is without them. Now, if I could go back and tell younger self, my younger self, one thing, it would be that you'll never understand. You'll never understand why gay rights is wrong, because it's not. So you can just stop trying. And if it's one thing I want you all to remember from this talk, it's that hate and homophobia is not inherent. Homophobia was and is spread, but so is love and acceptance. So what can you do? Well, you can try to stand up to those harassers, let the victims know that there's support right here, not just somewhere out there, but something tangible for them. It could be for a family member, a friend, a stranger. But it's okay if you're not comfortable with doing that. You can start with something smaller, like calling out the people who use offensive slurs. It doesn't have to be big. In fact, some of the biggest changes come from you all from doing the smallest things. So with all that said, I want to leave you guys one question. Do you think hate can spread faster or love? I'm thinking it's the latter, but let's prove it. Thank you.